Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Eric Hernandez and you are listening to episode number 600. We did it, folks. 600 episodes have somehow been made of this ridiculous show. Through all the years of conversations, back and forth, it's been done. 600 episodes. And we're going to keep going. We'll see what happens. On this episode, I talk about streaming services. I know it's something we've talked about in the past, but more specifically, I'm going to be talking about HBO. How they have HBO Go, HBO Now, and then the next step is HBO Max. So they're going to be streamlining their stuff all together and making one app or streaming service. I'll get into it. I'll talk about it a little bit and the different content that's going to be brought to HBO Max and how it affects the other existing apps. If you have HBO Go or HBO Now, by the end of July 2020, July 31st, they're going to stop supporting those apps and everything is going to be switched over to HBO Max. So if you still have those apps, you've got a few more weeks left to enjoy them and watch whatever you're watching, but then things are going to be transitioned over and it looks to be for the better. They have more stuff on HBO Max. They have more content, more providers. It looks like a good example is you've got your regular shows like Sopranos, Game of Thrones, Westworld. That's going to be included, but you're also going to get like Rick and Morty, The Big Bang Theory, a bunch of other series are coming there as well as movies and stuff. So if you get a chance, head on over to HBO Max. Nothing changes really. If you subscribe to your cable provider already for HBO, you're not paying anything extra. Hop on over. I'll get into that in the episode and we'll go from there. Also, on this show, I talk about one of the big pieces coming to HBO Max in 2021, and that is Justice League, the Snyder Cut. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I get into it. Trust me, I get into it a lot. Justice League came out a few years back, and it was not the movie a lot of fans were hoping it was going to be. Turns out, it went through a lot of different hands and changes in the studio before it was released in theaters. With that in mind, Warner Brothers is going to allow Zack Snyder, the original director, to come back, use what he already had filmed, whatever content was already put away in the archives. Plus, they're going to allow him to do some reshoots as far as, whatever he might need to flesh out some storyboards or some action scenes. And they're going to allow him to finalize his version of the film as he originally wanted it to be. It might be a little bit longer than it would have been in the theaters. I can't remember how long the theater cut ran. I think it was like 2.5 hours. The Snyder Cut might go further than that. So we'll see what happens. But HBO, Warner Brothers, DC, they're all hoping that it's going to be a big get for HBO Max in 2021 and will allow them to get more subscribers, more customers to come to the service as they try to streamline everything into one app. If you're a fan of HBO, if you're a fan of DC movies and characters, this is a big win for you. So have fun. We'll get into that and a whole bunch more on this episode. Let me get through the usual plugs and then we'll get you going. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the podcast section. We are also brought to you by Rabblecast.libsyn.com. It's where the show normally gets posted. Check out our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rabblecast, where the audio version is put up on there just to give you another option so you can listen to the show on the go or if you're at home. Make sure you send us a tweet at Rabblecast if you enjoy the show. If you don't enjoy the show, let me know. I like to get some feedback either way. Check us out on the Facebook fan page. Is another place where we try to post up different links and stories as they become available. And email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. Again, if you like the show, great. If you don't like the show, let me know. See what happens. Feedback, give it to me. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. That's about it. I can't think of anything else. But like I said, there's a whole bunch going on. I ramble a little bit, so forgive me. I am a nerd just running at the mouth. If you agree with me, fantastic. If you don't agree with me, let me know your thoughts. We'll see what happens. This has been discussed at length other places. I'm kind of late to the Justice League Snyder Cut news portion of it, but I thought it made sense to talk about it as I'm talking about HBO Max. So let's get into it. Let's see what happens and enjoy the show. this one's going to be a little bit of a weird one for me. A little change of pace. It's the afternoon. The sun's out. I'm not used to having a recording an episode during the day, so we'll see how this turns out. Today is a little bit of a different change of pace. Jen's out with the kids, visiting her mom, so I have some time during this afternoon on a Sunday to sit down and record. I normally like to do this sometime during the evening, or recently I've been recording late night when everybody goes to bed. But this is something we're going to try out and see how it goes. I don't want to take another week off. I hate when I do that. It's just the consistency. I like to try to keep going to make sure that I don't miss anything, and that way it's like going to the gym, like trying to work out that muscle, always continuing to do it. Otherwise, it gets kind of stale. Because I remember back when I got back to doing this, what was it, back in April, when the world went nuts, essentially. And it felt weird getting back on microphone. Don't get me wrong, it felt great, but it felt like I was out of practice. And when I got back to doing it, the timing was different. The pace was a little bit different. Also, keep in mind, I was doing it by myself at that point, being that my co-host had moved out of state. So, with that all being taken into consideration, we're going to try to cover a few things. I don't know how long we're going to run for, but we'll see what we can do. Because as soon as I get a phone call, I got to head back out and pick up the family. So, we'll see what we can cover today in this exciting episode of the Rabblecast. Crappy radio voice. All right. One of the things I've been talking about quite often recently is what you can do while you're home. Again, the world has gone a little bit crazy, so it's kind of difficult to find things that will entertain you because there's only so many books you can read, there's only so many games you can play, only so many news videos that you can watch before you go a little stir crazy because of everything going on. But if you're looking for things to watch, it's a treasure trove of streaming services right now. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. I know years ago, or I should say months ago at this point, Doug and I had talked about all the different streaming services that are available to people out there. And there's plenty at this point. It's become kind of nuts how everybody initially wanted a alternative to cable TV. If you pay too much for your cable, usually most places they will offer you a discount if you get your cable, your phone, anybody still use a landline, and your internet all in the same package. Around here they call it the triple play deal, where you get everything together in a bundle and they'll give you a quote-unquote discounted price. Otherwise the services individually will cost you a little bit more. So they kind of goad you into getting all three onto one bill, which is great for them, because at that point they're your all-in-one service provider. But people got tired of paying high prices for the cable bill, because they'll start you off at a lower deal, and then they'll start raising the price incrementally after a year or 6 months, depending on how the advertisement was structured. And then from there, you're paying upwards of $200, $250. There's people who pay ridiculous amounts a month. We were even doing it ourselves for a while. But then you look for deals. You look for different ways to cut the cord, essentially. So what ended up happening is a lot of people then would turn to Netflix. Was the big one at first. Everything you would stream, or if you still got the physical discs sent to you in the mail, much like Doug still does and a bunch of other friends we have, still do the same thing, take advantage of it. Because there are things that are available in hard copy that are not on Netflix's streaming service, if you could believe that one. So people will look for something to watch online. Then shortly thereafter, Hulu became another popular route to go through. That was an umbrella of different services, ABC, Fox, NBC, I believe it was. And then other ones started popping up here and there. Some of the cable channels decided that they wanted to also go in the same route and get their own streaming services. For this conversation or this subject, HBO said, hey, we've got plenty of material. We have our own original series, movies, little docu-series. So they wanted to jump into the fray with their streaming service. So what they did was, if you didn't have cable television where you would be able to get HBO normally, then you would be able to get what was called HBO Now. So you pay whatever subscription fee monthly, and then you would get access to all of their content. For those who did have cable and would subscribe to HBO on a regular basis, so it'd be included on your cable plan or whatever the case of the package that you had subscribed to, you could get HBO Go. And then from there, you would also be able to access all of their content. And they have a lot of great stuff. I mean, over the years, if you look at what HBO has been able to amass as far as series, even just recently, in recent years, like Game of Thrones, if you haven't caught up to Game of Thrones, whether whether you like the ending or not, for a newcomer to the show, they could watch the whole story of Westeros and the Stark family and go through from start to finish on Game of Thrones through HBO Now or HBO Go. HBO Go. Sorry, I'm a little out of it. But then if you look at other series that are on there, Silicon Valley, The Sopranos is a huge one for them. Just look at all the different series that have come out on HBO, and you're like, wow, there's a whole deep dive rabbit hole that you can enjoy. Even Westworld, another one, more recent years, that people can just enjoy. Not to mention all the different movies and docuseries that they have on there as well. Another one that comes up to mind that Doug and I talked about last year, Chernobyl, was a great little docuseries. How do you frame that one? It was based on a true story, but it was a dramatic reenactment of the story of Chernobyl and the explosion of the reactor. That was a fun one to watch. Heartbreaking. It like the reality of what happened was just ridiculous, but they had to shoehorn a few things into the series just to make it compact enough to tell the story. What else is there? You name it. There's a whole bunch of different things available on HBO that you can watch and enjoy. You can catch up on some old stuff and watch some new things as well. But, as we were talking about before, there are so many streaming services out there now that it's kind of hard to pick and choose which ones you want to watch. You could watch them all. I mean, if you could afford it, sure, why not? You can spend upwards of, I think the minimum nowadays is like $7. I think Disney Plus, if you were to get it by itself, $6 or $7, I believe. I think that's what it was. But if you want to get all the different services, you're looking to spend at least 10, 12, upwards of $15 per service. It's not bad if you're getting one or two, but if you start subscribing to a whole bunch of different services, it kind of defeats the purpose of cutting the cord, because at that point you're paying upwards of $150 or more just to watch some of the services for a few different shows. I know Jen and I jumped on CBS All Access. I actually held on to it for a little bit after the promotional free month during the whole epidemic or pandemic that broke out. Figured, okay, we'd catch up on Picard and Star Trek Discovery, and we enjoy those immensely because we're geeks, whatever. But I figured, okay, $10 a month isn't so bad. Let's see how long we can enjoy this. And we've been watching a few other shows here and there, NCIS New Orleans. We've been catching up on a few other shows here and there, checking out what they have as far as movies and specials. So we enjoy it as far as that's concerned. But that's another $10 a month that you're spending that, you could put it elsewhere if you really wanted to. For the time being, I'm letting it slide to see what else comes down the pike, just to enjoy it for the time being. But I think right now we share the Amazon Prime account, and Netflix. We had Hulu for a while, that went away, thankfully. But because I subscribe to cable TV still, we still get HBO Go. Being that we're subscribers, we get that included, so we don't have to pay extra for the streaming service. That becomes part of our deal, essentially, for the cable package. It's completely separate from our service provider, but it recognizes that we already subscribe to it through cable, so they're not charging us any extra for the Go app. But now there's an interesting thing going on, because let me also reference the other app that we watch from time to time, the DC Universe app, which is a whole bunch of fun. You get all the different shows that are available on there, original content that's not anywhere else, or at least wasn't initially, I should say. Titans, which is the live-action Teen Titans TV show. Swamp Thing, which only ran for one season, unfortunately. Although there's rumblings that might be making a comeback. We'll have to cover that on another episode down the line, see what happens. And Doom Patrol, which has been a lot of fun to watch. So all those shows are or were initially exclusive to DC Universe, but at one point there was rumblings that if you had a Netflix overseas, like a European account, Titans was actually available on Netflix overseas, which is fine. They want to, reach as many viewers and customers as they can with their content, so it's understandable. But back about a year ago, there was a merger between Warner Brothers and AT&T, and what it came down to is AT&T wanted to shore up their bottom line now that they're in business with Warner Brothers, and one of the things they wanted to do is cut the budget for a lot of the DC Universe stuff. When it first launched, you were getting a lot of different things. You can read digital comments, you were getting behind the scenes videos. They would have like specials as far as the old Batman and Superman movies. They had a lot of stuff that you can watch and enjoy, but now, slowly but surely, some of the stuff has been eroded from the app. Most recently, they released Justice League Dawn of Apocalypse, which is another animated feature based in the New 52 storyline. Last night, we had one of our friends, Dan, over, and we decided, hey, let's watch a few movies and see what we can catch up on. I had noticed by searching that it wasn't popping up, but I also noticed that a bunch of other stuff wasn't showing up either, and Dan had mentioned that, yeah, he had tried looking up a few different animated features from DC, and they weren't showing up anymore. So certain things were leaving the app. And then the other night I also noticed that HBO Go was suffering from the same thing, where there wasn't as big of a selection. Don't get me wrong, they have a great selection still to pick from for the time being, but if you heard rumblings around as far as content and streaming, HBO had announced their new service called HBO Max. Now, what Max is supposed to be, I guess, is going to be their definitive umbrella for a bunch of different things. And with that, that means the two other apps that I mentioned previously, HBO Go and the DC Universe app, DC Universe falls under the Warner Brothers umbrella, has made some deal with HBO where they're now going to bring everything together. I don't know if there's any other apps being affected. I'm sure there must be something out there that is going to suffer from this, but they're bringing together a whole bunch of different things together. One of the big purchases or requirements that they got for HBO Max was they paid a ridiculous amount of money for the TV show Friends. Friends was on Netflix for quite some time, and then they announced that it was going to be leaving sometime last year, I believe, last year or January of this year. And people are upset. They enjoyed it. Friends has, a fan following like you wouldn't believe. I've seen a few episodes here and there. I can't honestly say that I've been a big fan of Friends, but I've seen episodes, standout moments here and there, and yes, it's a fun show to watch. So it's also representative of its time when it came out in the 90s. But people were getting all upset because, Friends is leaving Netflix. Let's just say flat out, nowadays, you can get Friends other ways if you like. I mean, you could rent it from iTunes. You could purchase them digitally. You can purchase the hard copies if you still have a DVD player. If you don't have a DVD player, most players nowadays for video game systems, Xbox and PlayStation, have included a DVD inside the unit itself. So if you really, really want and you're good at taking care of your things, you could have hard copies and still enjoy Friends. Friends just did not disappear because it left Netflix. No, it's going to be showing up over on HBO Max because they want to make sure that they get enough people excited about the app itself that they can say, hey, look, this is what we're doing over here, so why don't you come and join us? Why don't you have fun watching our app instead of the other one? Not a bad call, not a bad idea. So they got a bunch of other things. I was looking through, they have DC, obviously, was one of the ones that I mentioned before. Crunchyroll, they have a select few animes that's on there. Turner Classics, I believe. Looney Tunes is on there. Cartoon Network. This is all just going from the top of my head. If you go to the bottom of the homepage for HBO Max, you can see what's available from brands or different channels or streaming services, I guess you can say, that they're trying to bring all this together. The Big Bang Theory, the entire seasons or the series itself, is available on HBO Max. And not too long ago, I missed the opportunity to talk about it when the news broke, but now they also have the Justice League Zack Snyder cut, the Snyder cut of the film, going to be coming to HBO Max in 2021, which is a big deal because a lot of people saying that there's a lot more film or footage that was captured and never used because there's the whole story. Well, you know what? Let me get back to this Justice League portion of HBO Max. There's a lot more to unpack on that one. But what's going on is a little announcement popped up on my screen. I use my Xbox for a lot of my streaming service when I'm at home. So if I'm watching in the living room, I'll turn on the Xbox, I'll sit back, I'll watch a few YouTube clips here and there. But if we sit down to watch TV shows or movies, then we'll go to different streaming services. And in this case, I went to HBO Go because I wanted to check something out. I was looking for, I can't remember what movie I was looking for. I know I've been looking for Ready Player One and something else to watch again, just to put in the background. Oh, and for anybody who's wondering what I'm watching currently in the background while recording this, I am watching Justice League War, based off of the New 52 storyline animated feature that came out a couple years back. It was fun, actually. It kicked off an entire little mini universe of animated features, which have been really, really good. But back to the little notice that popped up on HBO Go. It's also been popping up on HBO Now, I believe. It says here, on July 31st, the HBO Go app will no longer be supported by most devices, but AT&T has brokered deals that give most HBO cable subscribers access to HBO Max instead. If you subscribe to HBO through any of the cable providers below, you can get access to HBO Max at no extra cost. So I did that. I decided, okay, let's see what's going on. I went to the store, for the Xbox store, looked up HBO Max, downloaded the app onto my device, did whatever verification code I had to do, and from there I was, off and running. I was looking through, checking out a bunch of different things. From the get-go, I realized there was something that was on HBO Max that was not on HBO Go. Jen was telling me that, hey, the new Scooby-Doo movie is on HBO. Why don't we watch that for dinner? So that way our son can enjoy it as well. And I looked up on HBO Go, no sign of the new Scooby-Doo movie. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe, I don't doubt that she read it or saw it somewhere that it was going to be there, so that's kind of weird. But when I went to HBO Max, on the featured page at the very top on the banner, it was right there. It was the first banner I saw. It was Scoob, the new Scooby-Doo movie that has the Blue Falcon and Dynamite. And I was like, oh, there it is. That's where it ended up, I guess. I guess it's not going to be going to HBO Go. They're going to try putting the newer stuff over to HBO Max. That way, hopefully, they'll give people the incentive to stop using the older app. I mean, they're going to have to once July 31st rolls around. But it gives people incentive to jump on now rather than later to find out that, the app went away and now I got to go through this whole thing. It's really not that difficult of a process to download the app, verify yourself, provide your cable provider information, and you're good to go. In fact, what I'm watching right now is using the HBO Max app in the background. So it's interesting to see that they're pulling a bunch of different things. So July just came. I think we're in the second week of July at this point, and there are certain things that I'm assuming that at the end of June left HBO Go and HBO Now. And that's all going to be transitioned over to HBO Max. Now, whenever something like this happens, there's always contracts involved because streaming rights have become a big deal. So, to give you another example, Jen and I will usually watch the different TV shows for the Arrowverse. We don't watch them on TV when they normally air, just because we don't have the time to sit down at 8 o'clock or at 9 o'clock whenever they air and watch them as they get released. So we'll wait until those shows go through their run, and then they'll end up on Netflix. At least that was the original idea. I think at one point they were on Hulu also, but it got switched around here and there because people kept getting different streaming rights. Netflix is where they currently go to, and once they run out. So once the season airs, I think about a month or two passes, and then they end up on Netflix. So with the most recent run, they did the Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline for the Arrowverse, and we heard a lot of cool rumblings and rumors as to what happens on those shows, so we wanted to wait and watch them in order. You're like, oh, well, that's simple enough. Just watch, Arrow first, watch Flash first. No. You have to watch an episode of Arrow, then you have to watch an episode of The Flash, and then you have to watch an episode of Legends of Tomorrow. It's it's geeky, it's nerdy, I know, and there's people out there who actually put little schedules or maps and what order, watch order, a list order, when they aired and when you should watch them, so you can get the full effect of the storylines. Well, with that in mind, they also released a new Batwoman TV show that, for whatever reason, did not end up on Netflix when all the other shows finished up. So we searched, see what's going on. Like, this is kind of weird. Why is it on here? Then we searched the DC Universe app. It didn't end up on there. And then by chance, as I was looking through their content, I found Batwoman on HBO Max. I was like, all right, that's going to be a little bit more annoying to hop back and forth between apps and streaming services. I mean, granted, it's just a few clicks of a button here and there, but even as I'm saying it, it sounds like a first world problem. I have to switch out of this app to watch that app so I can watch this TV show. Fuck me for saying it, all right? I'm sorry. But it was the guesswork of trying to figure out where that one landed as far as streaming. Because if you Google a show or if you Google a movie to find out, where is this streaming? Like, a good example is Ready Player One. I'm a big fan of Ready Player One, the book and the movie. And every now and then I just like watching the movie or leaving it on the background when I'm doing other stuff because it's got some fun moments in it. And, little pieces of my childhood, I guess you can say, are just are brought back because of that movie. I went online to go find out where it was streaming, and Google does its best to try to tell you where it is. But it also, first and foremost, it tells you where you can rent it from. Now, I don't want to rent it. If I'm going to rent it, I might as well just buy it, and that's a different story entirely. I just haven't gotten around to that because I'm lazy, all right? Again, fuck me for being a procrastinating asshole. But as I was looking through, I was like, all right, let's see where it's at. And for some reason, I guess they just don't have it really streaming anywhere, which incentivizes you to buy it. I will get there eventually. But as I was going through, I was like, all right, that's kind of interesting. See where it is. Go to this app, see if it's there. It's not there. Netflix, HBO Go, Max, Hulu we're not currently using. There's another one called Tubi, which is a lot of fun, Tubi. I currently use that one to watch Generation 1 Transformers cartoons. I think I might have mentioned that one in the past in our previous show. There are so many different options out there that go through. It's just like, to have to hop back and forth and find out where your show might have landed because it's streaming now. Sometimes it's not a given anymore. Like I said, at one point it was on Hulu because CW had some kind of a deal with Hulu and they were using that. But now with Disney buying out the majority, once they bought out 20th Century Fox, they now own the majority of Hulu, which makes it kind of interesting because now you've got Hulu and you've got Disney Plus. So you've got a little overlap there as far as content's concerned. I mean, I'm sure they love it because whoever was watching Hulu, I'm sure also got Disney, and now they're just getting 2 subscription fees from one customer or one household, whatever the case is. I like this and I don't like this. I like it because HBO is finally getting their crap together and saying, we have HBO, we have HBO Go, we have HBO Go, and we have HBO Now. Let's try to streamline this. HBO Max. Cool. The DC Universe app is suffering because of this. I don't like that because it was kind of nice to have an all-in-one place to go for DC Universe content. So be it Batman, Superman, Justice League, any of the other movies that are coming out, be it the animated features or live action. The digital comics was a nice touch. And other things like that was really nice, especially as they were trying to create more original content. Another thing that's on HBO Go already is Doom Patrol. The second season is simultaneously being released on DC Universe and HBO Max. So I was like, all right, you can pick or choose one or the other and enjoy, have fun, and from there you're set. I mean, once you get into a habit of one app or the other, you're pretty much, you're set. You're good to go. I mean, like I said, I kind of like this and I don't like this because with so many different options out there, you kind of get lost in the shuffle of all the different streaming apps or options. Now what's happening is a lot of these places are starting to streamline stuff, which makes it nicer. But sometimes you get lost in that extra shuffle because now you're like, oh, where did my streaming app go? Where is everything headed now? It gets a little bit tricky when you're trying to find out where your favorite show went. If you're not watching it on TV to begin with, like if you're not DVRing or TiVo your favorite show onto a hard drive, now you have to find out where it is so you can stream it. And again, you're doing searches online, you're going through the search bar of whatever app that you're on. It's, like I said, it's a very, very first world problem where you're like, oh, I've got too many options. I get it, I really do. But for a nerd like me who likes to watch a bunch of different things, and I would like to have a central point or central place to watch them all, it's much easier for me to go to, let's say, Netflix, where I could watch right now all the different CW shows because they have them there, or all the different movies that come out, or even just the Netflix original content, which is so much fun. HBO Go was fun because you had all the regular original HBO content that was there, so that was fun. But now I've introduced another app on top of it. Now granted, once July is over, HBO Go will disappear because it'll no longer be supported, so I can delete that off of my list of apps and HBO Max will take over. Again, I get it. It's just the annoyance, the little inconveniences, I guess you can say. Because nothing changes hands as far as I'm still subscribed to my cable provider, so I'm still not paying for it because it's already included in my bill from that end. But it's just the back and forth and figuring out and what's streaming services here today, what streaming service is going to wait tomorrow. Not to mention the fact that every month they shift their content, so new stuff is coming in while the old stuff's being pushed off, because you can't have everything on your servers all at once. That's just too much space, virtual space that's being taken up, and maybe not everybody's going to watch that show, or maybe not everybody's going to enjoy that series. So they're going to have to find stuff that everybody's going to enjoy and get the most views or customers that way. Netflix has done a great job of that over the years with their original content and with finding content that people know and love that they can bring in and have people sit down and binge. Friends was a very good example of that. I think they had it for quite some time. People were loving it. You can watch Friends whenever you wanted. Something that you knew, something that was comfortable for you, especially if you're home by yourself or you really aren't going out much these days. You can watch it over and over again. Now, that's over on HBO Max. Go watch it there. Have some fun. Enjoy it while you can, because I don't remember how long the exclusivity of that deal will last. But I'm sure you could binge Friends, the series, in that time frame. So no worries on that one as far as that's concerned. But now, as I was mentioning before, the cut of Justice League, the Zack Snyder cut, or the Snyder cut as it's being referred to, hashtag Snyder cut. There's a whole story around this now when, so let's see, let's go back a little bit. Zack Snyder was brought in to do the Man of Steel movies, the new Superman film, and they wanted to be able to tell a more gritty story for Superman. It's a tough story to tell because Superman is very vanilla. He was the Boy Scout, essentially. So how do you bring this character to the big screen and make it resonate with people, especially nowadays, being that Superman, the values that he upheld in the comics back then are kind of like tired and boring for a modern day audience. Zack Snyder is a very visual storyteller, so he found a good balance in how to bring that story to the big screen. You had Man of Steel, and then they brought in Batman with Batman v Superman, which again was visually a really good storytelling. Storytelling as far as the framework itself, story-wise, was kind of clunky. Let's put it that way. One of the things I noticed on HBO Max, they do have the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, or Ultimate Cut. So I think there's more footage in that one, so it extends it about like another half hour, I believe. Don't quote me on that one. But there's more to it, so there's more connecting points for the storyline. Fast forward to when they were doing Justice League, which I'm not going to even get into the whole comparison of Justice League between Marvel. We've talked about it. The internet has talked about it at length. It's tired. It's boring. There are two different things, apples and oranges. Yes, they're all superheroes, but the characters are very different, and the storytelling is very different. So, with trying to make Justice League for the movies, Snyder had this idea of doing two films back to back. And when he was working on the film, there were so many different people involved, trying to put in their 2 cents, trying to make changes, trying to give their notes, and things got muddled, is the best way we'll put it. For lack of a better term, it got muddled, and things were changed, things were cut, things were reshot, and at one point there was a story where Zack Snyder had suffered a loss in the family, and he was going to take some time off from filming Justice League and go be with his family, because when you're doing a film of that magnitude, it takes up pretty much your entire day for a long time. I don't remember what the production schedule was, how many months they were working on the film itself as far as shooting, but I'm sure that's a large commitment time-wise, that rather than doing that, you know what, we're having a bad time family-wise, I'm going to go be with my family and take care of this. At that point, it was reported that Joss Whedon was coming in to finish up what Zack Snyder had done. If you're not familiar with Joss Whedon, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Dollhouse, I'm trying to remember some of the other, Firefly, Serenity, the first Avengers movie and the second Avengers movie. He came in to work on Zack Snyder's film. He did some reshoots, some rewrites, and then they put out the film with Joss Whedon finishing up what Zack Snyder had done. What really, it turns out, maybe happened, I should say allegedly, was that it wasn't that Zack Snyder had stepped down, it was that Zack Snyder was unceremoniously let go from the project. And they kept it quiet so that they can bring in Joss Whedon, who they at that point figured, okay, he has a lot of experience writing these kind of characters, and not just in live action or movie, but he also has worked on the comics for various different characters in the past, both for DC and Marvel. So they brought him in, knowing full well that he's familiar with it and he has a handle on it. Let's let him take the reins from here on out and see what he can do. So it's not just that he recorded, or I should say, not that he just did reshoots for what Zack Snyder was doing. He did rewrites of scenes and added other parts of the movie that weren't Snyder's, if that makes sense for anybody out there. When you do reshoots, normally you're just, after you screen it, you get some idea of what the audience reaction is. Maybe this part doesn't work. Maybe this part's funny. Let's add to this part to make it more impactful. Joss Whedon was rewriting and adding stuff to the film, so essentially that he can get a film credit of himself. Otherwise, they have to give sole credit to Zack Snyder. I believe it was like 2/3 of the film have to be done, more than half at least, I believe, for somebody to be able to get a director credit. It's something weird with the guilds that way. But when Joss Whedon came in, there were stories now that have come out that said that his conduct on the set was unprofessional, and he had like gross misconduct. So there's a lot of people that now questioning what's going on. More specifically, Ray Fisher, the actor who played Cyborg in Justice League, has now come out and said that he did not like the way that Joss Whedon conducted himself on set and how he treated what Zack Snyder had done previously. So whatever he filmed, whatever he did differently, it was not the same atmosphere or same working environment that Ray Fisher and the other actors were used to. The stories that are coming out are from people who worked on both cuts. So production crew have come out and said, hey, look, we worked on this previously. Now we understand you're coming in and you're going to be doing your thing. And a lot of people were getting upset because Joss Whedon was essentially trashing the work that Zack Snyder had done, like almost like laughing at it, like he really did this, I can't believe that, and then changed it up a little bit. If you're going to compare directing styles or storytelling styles between Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon, they are very, very different people in that respect. As I said before, Zack Snyder loves visual storytelling. He did The Watchmen. And if you were to read the original story of The Watchmen in the comics and compare it to the live action film, there's a lot of stuff that's frame for frame taken right out of the comics. So visually, he supported that medium of the comics and recreated that story for the big screen. Joss Whedon, he's more about story, more about development, and more about the little, funny moments he could have of levity before he crushes your heart and takes away your favorite character. See Serenity or Firefly and the ultimate end of Wash and Book that unfortunately, so spoilers, didn't have happy endings. But or even if you watch Angel or Buffy, like some of the characters that are taken out, it's just heartbreaking when your fan favorite characters are just unceremoniously destroyed on the TV screen or in comic books. getting back to Justice League, now there's this big movement. Right before Ray Fisher decided he wanted to speak out, there's this big movement now, and it's been going on for years now since the movie has come out. They were talking about, release the Snyder Cut, and there was online petitions, and fans were having outcries. We want to see this because that's not the movie we heard about, and there's a lot of neat leaks that were coming out through scripts and people who had worked on it and people who had seen test footage. There was different things that was talked about that didn't make it to the big screen, and people were like, oh no, this is not the film we heard about. This is not the film we were expecting. We expected more. Again, if you remember when Justice League was announced, there was rumors of it being a two-parter. So this big event for the DC characters, you're going to have Justice League 1, and then it was going to lead into this big end battle, which was then going to lead into the next movie, which is supposedly going to introduce Darkseid and his world apocalypse, where he has his whole army and he's preparing to take over the world and invade Earth. They had this whole thing set up, and it was... If you go online and research it, I'm not going to go into it here. If you go online and research the idea, the story arc that was proposed sounded really good. It sounded like it was going to really pay off. But with the reaction that audiences gave Justice League, I mean, most people just trashed it. I don't want to say I trashed it. I just wasn't a big fan of it. I don't want to sit here and tear it apart because there were certain things I liked. And it's also questionable now which parts that I liked that were Snyder's original scenes and Joss Whedon scenes. I mean, some of them you can pick out just due to the humor. But because of the reaction that the movie got, the backlash that it got while it was after theaters, it looked like Warner Brothers was not too keen on releasing a follow-up to it, or not even continuing the DC Extended Universe, the DCEU, and they felt that maybe they should not try to do what Marvel had done. That the whole idea of a joined universe. Maybe they should take it easy and see what happens. I honestly didn't think any of the little petitions or outcries were going to go anywhere. There's lots of stories online, lots of different people reporting on it, a lot of different petitions going around. A lot of comic book groups were talking about, we want to see this version, we want to see that version. I just wrote it off like, oh yeah, that's never going to happen. Anytime petitions go online, it's very difficult to really get the people to respond to those petitions. You're going to have no end of fans trying to get what they want, but it really comes down to does the studio or do the creators really want to kowtow to what sometimes can be a small number of fans having loud voices, or sometimes the majority of fans saying, this was a tragedy and we should get the real cut, or we should redo this or refilm it. A good example was Game of Thrones, the ending of it. A lot of fans of the book series were pissed off and like, we should just reshoot the entire last season. That's a lot of money, and if you can raise that kind of money, I think we should put that money towards something else other than reshooting Game of Thrones, but that's just my opinion. Really what it comes down to is I didn't think it was going to happen. I honestly did not think any would come of this, but all of a sudden, a few months back, it was announced. HBO Go, HBO and Warner Brothers have come to a deal, and they've signed a contract that they're going to spend a little extra money, I can't remember how many extra million, to take whatever was filmed from Zack Snyder. They're going to bring Zack Snyder back, and they're going to try to piece together what was the Snyder Cut. Now, this is not the first time this has been done. If you recall, Superman 2, Richard Donner had a falling out with the people who owned the film rights for the Superman film franchise. And back then, his Superman 2 was, the best way we can put it is bastardized. It was not the original vision that he had for it. But years later, they were able to get Richard Donner to redo his cut with existing footage that was still, locked away in the archive. And there is a Superman 2 that was released normally, and now there's a Superman 2, the Donner cut. So you can get a better idea of what he had in store for the character Superman and all the supporting characters. So it's not unprecedented for a director to come out and be able to say, hey, look, it was released this way, but now we're going to get a chance to do the director's cut. I mean, even the term director's cut has been used quite a few times, where a movie will come out in a theatrical release, and then they'll try to do a director's cut or extreme cut or the ultimate cut, whatever the case is. I mean, watch the Highlander movie series. There's a lot of different cuts of the films throughout time. Apocalypse Now, there's a few different cuts of that one. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Blade Runner, there's a couple different cuts that exist out there. So there have been different versions of different films in the past. It's not like it's something brand new. But with Zack Snyder, on this level, I think that might be the biggest. I think it might be the biggest in terms of fan outcry that they've been demanding this. And Warner Brothers finally said, okay, fine, we're going to do this, but we're going to do this as an exclusive for HBO Max. So work on it. We'll try to get the actors to come back and don their costumes again. If not, I'm sure they're probably just going to use stunt doubles and digitally map faces onto bodies so they can film a bunch of different scenes, probably a few stunt scenes here and there, CGI a bunch of different things, and then do the cut the way it's supposed to be. Now, my only question is, if the Snyder cut works, will they then continue to roll out the second film for Justice League 2? Because if you have not seen it, the story of the Justice League live action film has the character Steppenwolf, who is one of Darkseid's minions from Apocalypse. The Justice League fight Steppenwolf as he's trying to gather these items called mother boxes that are from Apocalypse. Once they defeat Steppenwolf, he's supposed to get beheaded, and his head flies into one of the portals that's supposed to take him back to Apocalypse. When that head rolls down the aisle, what's supposed to be the throne room for Darkseid, it lays at Darkseid's feet, and when the camera pans up, you see Darkseid, and it's pretty much like, okay, now it's my turn. So Justice League 2 is supposed to be the coming of Darkseid to Earth to take on the heroes, and also ties into the nightmare scene that Batman had in Justice League. So it gives you more clarity on some of the scenes that were played out in Justice League, but we just never got a follow-up. Like the one scene with Bruce Wayne hanging out in the Batcave, that all of a sudden the Flash comes out of a portal saying that Lois, she's the key. Like, no, that never really got followed up on. People were like, what the hell was that? There's a lot more to that was supposed to play out that we never got more clarity on. Ray Fisher was one of the ones that I mentioned before that was speaking out on everything, because when you do press junkets or press tours, you know, they're trained to say certain things about the movie, about the director, about one another, to say, oh yeah, you know, it was a fun time, we had a blast, you know, it was a great collaborative effort, and would love to do it again, that kind of thing. You're told what to say and what not to say, so that the film is promoted and more people are enticed to see it. Now, Ray Fisher says he forcibly retracts any statements he had said about Justice League and Joss Whedon up until recently. Now he's taking it all back. He's saying it was a horrible time. It was a miserable time. I don't know what the hell happened. That's not the film that we signed on to do. And from all reports coming out now, that might be the case. I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't have first-hand knowledge, but a lot of people coming forward now claim that they do have first-hand knowledge, like Ray Fisher himself, and if that's the case, that's unfortunate, because Joss Whedon is turning out to be not the guy we would have thought he would have been. Now, Joss Whedon had his own problem a few years back, where some people have come out against him due to his conduct, not just with some of his actors, but also just how he carries himself on set, and that's very, very unfortunate. I can see why DC and the executives at Warner Brothers thought Joss Whedon would be the guy to bring in to fix everything for them. I mean, if you worked on Avengers and Avengers 2, it just seemed like the logical choice. But not to defend Joss Whedon, but my idea is that because of the problems that Joss Whedon ran into on the second Avengers film, there was a lot of things he was being told to do to set up for future MCU films, that I just feel that he got a little burnt out and resentful towards the front office, that kind of carried over more so over to Justice League, and especially when he comes in to clean up somebody else's work, so to speak. So I think that might have played into it. But again, if you're an ass, you're an ass. There's no way around that one. If he carried himself in such a way that made people uncomfortable and didn't want to be there, that's on him, not them. So whatever the case is, but I'm not going to sit here and bash him. I'm talking about Justice League 2021, or at least the Snyder cut. They're going to spend quite a few dollars to, I think it was a few million. I want to say it's like 20-30 million, something like that. Something, it seems small. I mean, it is like a small budget for a film these days, but they're going to spend that amount of money to try to get this film redone, cut the way that Snyder had wanted to see it originally, and hope that that will be something that will bring in more customers to HBO Max. Will it work? I don't know. I have only seen Justice League. Saw it once in the theaters, and I may have seen it again at home. I don't remember. I really didn't want to spend more time on that one or Batman v Superman again because I didn't enjoy them in the theater. They were not the story that I was expecting. They were not the story that I had thought the director and the studio were going to give us, but it is what it is. I mean, if you go in to watch, let's say, Avengers, and then you go to watch a DC movie, you're not going to get the same thing. You're just not. So don't put that bar there, whether it be high or low, to expect a certain thing. Just go in expecting a story with these fantastic characters, and hopefully you'll be able to enjoy it. But as I said before, the fans sometimes can be very brutal, and maybe it's the a very loud minority that's taking to message boards or to different social media platforms and saying this sucks, I don't want to see this, they should have done this, you should have done that, whatever the case is. Maybe that's just a small group. But now Warner Brothers is going to bank on that small, loud group and hope for something to come of it. So we'll have to see. I don't know. It's going to be a matter of time. And then the other story was the director David Ayer of The Suicide Squad, the first film. There's going to be a sequel directed by James Gunn. That's completely different. That's coming up soon, hopefully. But David Ayer had mentioned the same thing. He had a problem with The Suicide Squad, where he did the movie itself, and then the studio house that did the trailers did such a good job with the trailers that somebody at Warner Brothers said, hey, how about you guys do a cut of the film? We'll show Ayer's cut, and we'll show your cut to a screening audience, and from there we'll decide on which one goes to theater. Well, apparently the fans liked the more stylized cut from the studio, this secondhand studio, and it involved more music, more action, more craziness, and they figured that's the one that they wanted. The one that David Ayer did, he had originally said, no, I'm behind what the studio has decided. I think it's a really good version of it, and then let's put it out there. Now David Ayer, especially with the Snyder cut becoming more of a thing, more of a reality, I should say, now David Ayer's come out and said, no, my cut is out there somewhere, and it still exists, and it should be seen. So who knows? Maybe if this cut of Justice League succeeds, maybe we'll see a new cut of Suicide Squad as well. We have to wait and see what happens. And then on a completely different note, the recent passing of Joel Schumacher, the director, more infamous, I should say right now, for the last two Batman films of that era. The first two films for Michael Keaton had Tim Burton directing, and then later on you had Joel Schumacher doing Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, with Val Kilmer and George Clooney respectively being Batman, Bruce Wayne in each film. Now, Joel Schumacher, who recently passed away, now the studio is saying that, there is a cut of Batman Forever that's about like a 3-hour cut, I believe, that's a lot darker in tone, and now they're playing with the idea of possibly releasing that version of Batman. Batman Forever. So, again, it's not like it hasn't been done before, and it will probably be done again because there's a lot of people sometimes in the studio system that want to get their fingers into the pot, essentially, and say, hey, I did this, I changed that, or this is what I included in the storyline. So, different cuts of films have existed in the past for any number of films. It just depends on what we see when it gets finally released into theaters or on VHS or DVD or even digital nowadays. Things are very, very different. So we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. I for one, I will give another go to the Snyder Cut. I would like to see what was changed, what was cut out, or what's going to get included, because I would like to think that there's a better story that was told using more footage or more content. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. It could just be a long, boring mess. That's entirely possible. I'm trying to look at it from both ends and be objective as far as watching it. Or not objective. I can't remember. I'm rambling now. What it comes down to, I would really like to see it pan out well for Snyder. Whatever the truth is on whether he stepped down or he was let go, how this all works out now. I mean, he's going to get paid to come back and do this cut of his. Whether it works out for HBO Max and the streaming service, that'd be fantastic. If it's a win for everybody out there who's a fan of comic books and DC in particular, because you're going to get a better story, hopefully. And with that, you might get better cuts down the line, or different movies that are made with that in mind, saying, hey, look, maybe the fans don't want this, or maybe they want more of this and less of that, whatever the case. But it should be really interesting to see, because that also might mean they might continue the DC extended universe. With that in mind, is this last little piece of news I guess I'll end up on. Michael Keaton has been in talks to reprise the role that he played in the old Batman movies directed by Tim Burton. Not that he's going to do another Batman movie in particular, but to be Batman once again in the upcoming Flash movie, which has more people talking right now that might be the case, because they might have the Flashpoint Paradox, which is the story of the Flash trying to save his mother from being murdered, and the dramatic changes that has in the timeline. It's a great story. If you had a chance to read it, I implore anybody out there who's unfamiliar with it, go read it. Or if you go online and you go to the different streaming services, they've turned it into an animated feature. And that version is also very enjoyable as well. If they do that storyline where Flash is somehow screwed up the timelines, and maybe that's why we have all these different DC films that are somewhat connected and somewhat disjointed, he could bring all those stories together. He could be the nexus of all these different story points and make a multiverse, just like they have in the comics, the Infinite Earths. You can have the Crisis storyline play out very differently through all the different live action films, TV shows, and everything else that's involved. That would be really cool. And to think that Michael Keaton, who played Batman so many years ago, walked away from it when he was offered more money and when they were changing directors, he pretty much just said, nah, I'm good, I'm done. Like, if it's not going in the direction that I am comfortable with, or I want to portray, then I'm out of here. And, in steps Joel Schumacher and Val Kilmer, and they continued the franchise for at least 2 other films. For him to come back and have another bite of that apple, so to speak, is kind of cool. And throw in there that he was able to play a character, a villain in the MCU, is the Vulture in Spider-Man Homecoming. That was a great scene. That was a great character he played. So that's great for him. It's great to see a resurgence for Michael Keaton himself. Another film, if you haven't had a chance to watch, was Birdman, which has a few jabs of him being Batman in there in the script. It's not directly referenced, but it's played on a little bit. But to see Michael Keaton back in front of the cameras, it's a lot of fun. So I would like to see it all play out. So there's two things that you can take away from this episode. One, it's kind of nice to see streaming services now try to streamline themselves a little bit down so it's not as confusing when you go to look for something to watch on TV. It shouldn't be that confusing, honestly. It should be very simple. Grab whatever streaming services you like, stick to those, pay for those. Don't pay too much for streaming, because that defeats the purpose of cable cutting. But HBO Max, they're going to be doing away with HBO Go, HBO Now, and it's questionable whether the DC Universe app is going to be going away, because it's being affected by this whole deal, but we'll see what happens. It falls under the whole AT&T Warner Brothers umbrella, so see how that pans out. But I hope they continue to make some really interesting moves to bring more customers or subscribers to HBO Max. I already mentioned Friends being one of them, being a longtime series, a love series, being on HBO Max, and then the Justice League Snyder Cut for 2021. See what happens with that, especially right now. If we're still home, if we're still told, it's not safe to go out, it's not safe to do this, whatever the case is, stop the spread, it would be beneficial to stay at home and still have stuff that you can enjoy, right? It'd be nice to be able to get some stuff done around the house, if you have to do chores, if you have to do some laundry, wash the dishes, whatever the case is, and then at the end of the night, you can enjoy a nice movie on your favorite streaming service or streaming app. Sure, why not? Let's go for it and see what happens. So, I think I've pretty much run my time. I'm rambling at this point. So, if you're out there, I hope you're staying safe. You're trying to limit the spread of all this craziness that's going out there. Don't watch too many news videos or news outlets. It'll just drive you stir crazy. That's just my personal opinion. Take it for what it's worth. But if you've made it this far, thank you for listening. We are the Rabblecast.